What if you were hiding god-tier powers in a magic class full of newbies? Well, that's the mess our boy is in when Professor Gyro whips out a rare, mana-scanning device telling everyone he's hunting for a monster hiding among them. Argon is up first, and the orb clocks him at a quality of 4 and quantity of 17, which is already way better than last year's average. Then Furion steps up and hits a quality of 6 and a quantity of 20, making the whole room go nuts. But then the sleepy kid Damien wakes up and taps the orb, and he proceeds to absolutely shatter everyone's ego with a quality of 9 and a wild quantity of 67. Bruh, now every single eye in the room is locked on Asta. He's trying to stay low-key, but the system flashes 10 before it just errors out completely fried from crossing its max threshold. Asta has to force a do-over, faking a weak sauce quality of 3 and a quantity of 15 to stay under the radar. See, there's a damn good reason our MC is hiding his true power. Not long ago, Asta was working as a troubleshooter mage for the powerful House Declan. While on a mission, he decides to borrow a mysterious tome for himself. Naturally, he gets tracked by assassins, but he claps them all, leaving just one dude alive. This is so he can squeeze him for every last drop of information. Asta pins the hunter down with his magic, demanding to know how to use the ancient tome. But the guy spills that he has no clue. It starts dawning on Asta that Declan himself doesn't get how valuable this book really is. No cap if he knew he wouldn't have just stashed it in some dusty old basement. But they still sent killers after him for it. It's wild that they're hunting him down, even when their own boss doesn't know what to do with the prize. The hunter tries to cut a deal, suggesting Asta should hand over the tome so he can help him beg the head of the house for his life. Asta is not having it and tells the hunter his life is forfeit. But just then a portal rips open right behind him. He feels this absolutely terrifying, suffocating aura pouring out from the portal. The source of that aura turns out to be a sharp-dressed dude holding a cane. This apparently is Farron Declan. Yeah, the head of House Declan. The big boss himself. Farron casually tells Asta he'd like his book back, and then they can have a little chat. Asta is completely floored by the sheer power radiating off this guy. He's been a troubleshooter for over 10 years, with half of that time spent serving the Declan family, but this is the first time he's ever actually laid eyes on the head of the house. House Declan is basically the #1 magic family on the entire eastern continent, and the word on the street is that its current leader is the most cracked mage in the family's entire history. Aztecs can feel how dangerous Farron is, but he decides to play it bold anyway. Asta looks him in the eye and asks if he's really about to stoop so low as to steal another person's hard-earned loot. He calls it a shameless move. Farine just laughs, but Asta is sweating bullets because he knows exactly what it means for the head of the house to show up in person. This isn't a negotiation. Asta has to admit it even to himself. This guy's aura is the most overwhelming thing he has ever felt. Farine tells Asta straight up that he could kill him in a heartbeat and just take the tome, but he actually wants to talk things out. Farine tells Asta he wants him to come back and work for House Declan again. He promises to wipe the slate clean, forgiving all his sins if he just comes back and brings the tome with him. Farine even admits that Asta's talent is legit remarkable, and he really doesn't want to see that kind of potential go to waste. Farine is seriously impressed that even though Asta came from the slums, the gray zone, he somehow managed to master some seriously effective and deadly techniques. Farine lays on the charm, telling Asta he could reach legendary status if he just lets House Declan back him up. After listing all the perks he'd get for returning to the fold, Farron circles back to the most important part of the deal. He has to return the tome. Without missing a beat, Asta tells Farron he agrees to his terms, and you can see the relief wash over Farron's face. But then Asta hits him with a however, letting him know he has one condition of his own. And what Asta demands next is absolutely savage. He basically tells Farron to give him the leadership seat for the entire house, and only then will he think about giving the tome back. To prove he's dead serious, Asta straight up executes the hostage he's been holding. The man has zero chill. This move royally pisses Farron off, who tells Asta he's walking a path that leads straight to an early grave. Asta knows the dude isn't wrong, but he still launches himself at Farron just to see what happens. He's basically trying to measure the power gap between them, but Farron easily deflects Asta's blue attack with his red shield. At that point, Farron realizes he needs to teach Asta a lesson, so the kid understands they aren't even in the same league. Looking cool as a cucumber while flexing his insane aura, Farron fires off a massive magic blast that sends Asta flying. Asta almost gets turned into a crispy critter, but manages to escape. It finally sinks in what kind of power the head of the house is packing. He can't find a single opening to exploit, and the moment Pharaon sees him hesitate, he hits him with another blast. Pharaon tells him there's no need to compare their power levels because he is on a completely different plane of existence. Asta quickly finds himself cornered by a powerful magic attack that's impossible for him to dodge. He gets absolutely smashed, but it's clear Pharaon held back. He lets Asta know he's not ready to kill him, he just wants to talk. Asta then asks what would actually happen if he decided to return to House Declan. Pharaon's reply is blunt, he wouldn't believe him for a second. Asta's glad they're on the same page, and since everything's out in the open, he starts charging up another attack. He declares that he's done being a messenger boy and a dog for anybody pouring every last bit of his energy into the spell. He burns as bright as lightning before he leaps toward Farron and unleashes the attack. He screams that he's never going back into that kennel. But even Asta's ultimate attack doesn't do jack squat against Pharaon's defenses. Pharaon finally decides it's time to show him what real power looks like. Before Asta can even blink, he gets hit by a crazy powerful magic blast that makes him see flashbacks of his life. By the time he opens his eyes again, Pharaon is standing over him, looking down on him like he's nothing. He asks Asta if he finally gets what true power feels like. Asta has to admit that no-cap Pharaon is ridiculously strong. And since Pharaon is so eager to talk, Asta asks if he'll be allowed to become a troubleshooter again. But Farron tells Asta he wants him for something much bigger than being a troubleshooter. He wants him to be the next head of the Bongson family. Astad is completely floored when he hears the insane offer Pharaon is putting on the table. I mean, House Declan is so powerful that they could even make a play for the throne. Asta immediately puts two and two together. They want him as the head of the Bunshin family, so he'll have to swear loyalty to them. He'd basically be a puppet ruler for one of their vassal houses. As Asta finally understands Pharaon's real endgame, he reaches into his storage and pulls out the tome, which makes Farron smile. When he sees the book, he tells Asta that he wants both him and the tome, looking pretty pleased with himself. He thinks Asta is finally choosing the logical path, but just as he's about to grab the tome, Asta just sets the damn thing on fire, leaving Farron completely shook. He demands to know what the hell he's doing. Asta flatly tells him that he never had any plans to give it to him in the first place. Pharaon assures Asta that he's going to die a horrible, painful death. That's when Asta reveals he didn't become a troubleshooter for the cash. Turns out he's furious because one of his teammates was devoured by Declan's young master, who was using forbidden magic. After the whole incident, House Declan just covered it all up. Pharaon is stunned and realizes this whole thing is about revenge. But Asta clears the air, saying he was only ever after justice for his dead teammate. Asta also tells Pharaon that he had actually considered his recent quiet spell a form of retirement. Then Asta dramatically reveals that these are his final words. The second he finishes speaking, Pharaon engulfs him in flames, telling Asta to burn and regret his choices for eternity. However, Asta just screams right back at Pharaon while he's being burned alive. He shouts that he doesn't have a single regret. Asta was willing to throw it all away if it meant he'd never have to work for House Declan again. As the flames completely consume his body, Asta sees it as his own kind of freedom, and he swears that if he ever gets a second chance, he's gonna make them all pay. Then suddenly something feels off, like the world just froze solid. Asta is totally bugging out, but for some reason, the glowing tome in his hands is still buzzing with power. Asta watches as strange magic circles start appearing all over him, and that's the last thing he sees before everything goes black. When he finally opens his eyes, he finds himself in a filthy alley, living the life of a street rat. He glances around and the horrible truth starts to sink in. He's somehow gone back in time. He's a kid again, stuck back in the slum they called the Gray Zone. Asta stumbles to a lake and stares at his own reflection, trying to confirm he isn't dreaming. It's him, all right, just a much younger, scrawnier version. The fire mark on his chest is still there, a permanent brand even across time. He has no clue how he time traveled, but he's willing to bet that Magical Tome had everything to do with it. He also realizes that the book must be some next-level artifact, for the head of the house to have hunted him down for it personally. But there's practically zero information out there about the tome, so he's basically in the dark. Still, he's back in the past, and he's been given a do-over. Asta knows this is his shot to finally achieve the dream he was forced to give up. His mind races back to his true objective, a mission that wasn't just his but also belonged to his comrades. He remembers talking with his buddy about why they were stuck at the bottom of society's barrel. His friend told him their lives would be completely different if they just had an education. They wouldn't have ended up as disposable pawns for the rich scumbags who were using them. Because of that conversation, Asta's ultimate goal wasn't to retire rich, but to build a massive library. Asta dreams of creating a sanctuary where anyone, no matter their status, gender, or how little coin they had, could come and read freely. In fact, he wants to be extra about it and build a whole tower. He doesn't really need the tower, but he just thinks it would be a hell of a flex. On top of that, he plans on leaking the Declan House's most secret technique on the very first page of his books. This would give even the poorest kids from the slums a fighting chance. He's already imagining the absolute meltdown the nobles are going to have. The only roadblock is figuring out how he's going to get his hands on that secret manual. He's grinning at his own evil genius when a boot suddenly connects with his cheek. He turns to see some punk looking absolutely furious, screaming about where he'd been. The guy keeps kicking Asta, yelling that he saved a spot for him, but Asta was a no-show. Asta can't for the life of him remember this loser who's using him as a punching bag. But no way is he going to just take this abuse. He grabs the dude's leg mid-swing. He tells the bully he's gotten in 7 good hits, but warns him he's about to get paid back 70-fold. Asta throws a punch at the guy's chest, but his kid body is pathetically weak, and he just sprains his own wrist. Asta is in total disbelief, and while he's still processing his epic fail, another fist slams into his face. The dude just goes right back to wailing on him without missing a beat. The kicks are so painful, Asta actually starts crying from the humiliation. The beatdown goes on until Asta spots an opening and shoves the punk into the lake. Before the guy can get his bearings, Asta is already booking it. The bully climbs out of the water and yells after him, asking why he's running. Asta just shouts back that he isn't running. He's making a tactical retreat. He makes sure to let the dude know that he's memorized his face. He promises to remember every single hit he took. After all, he was a veteran troubleshooter, and the word quit just wasn't part of his vocabulary. He's dead set on getting his revenge, hiding out in an alley and just staring at his sprained wrist. He seriously can't believe how fragile his body is. It literally broke just from him throwing a single punch. For now, Asta decides to put his big dream on the back burner and just focus on leveling up his weak trash tier body. All of a sudden, some kid with a striking red eye pops up and asks Asta if he's hungry. Asta is totally caught off guard by this and asks the kid, do I know you? The boy just casually says he has absolutely no clue who Asta is. Bruh, Asta could have guessed that much since the kid is dressed like he's straight out of a noble family. He just figures the kid probably got kicked out of his fancy home during some family power struggle. In Asta's head, he's labeling this dude as a cute little walking time bomb. The kid then goes ahead and introduces himself as Damien. Asta's just thinking, why is this creepy kid staring at him and spilling his life story? He's so weirded out, he's forced to ask him if he's, mentally all there. Damien just keeps going, saying he doesn't have a mom, and Asta chimes in that he doesn't have a dad, as if they're in some competition. Like, who can win the title of best orphan? Asta straight up suggests they go their separate ways because he has zero interest in getting mixed up with a ticking time bomb. A few moments later, Damien is still just standing there, and Asta is officially creeped out. He has to ask Damien if he's ever going to leave, but shockingly, Damien tells him he's coming with him. A little voice in Asta's head is screaming at him to just smack the kid. He figures maybe a good whack would snap the boy back to reality. Instead, though, he just tells Damien to get lost. Right then, Damien reaches out and touches Asta's head where he got injured. Damien confidently tells him not to worry, because he can totally heal him. With this unsettling smile on his face, he summons a glowing magic circle that starts pulsing with healing energy. At first, Asta thinks it's just some basic magic touch, but he quickly realizes he's way off. What he's seeing isn't simple magic. It's the legendary light of healing. That's a secret technique that belongs only to the House of Blandor. And from what Asta remembers, House Blandor got completely wiped out by House Declan. Asta can't believe his luck. He just stumbled headfirst into some seriously dangerous business. He starts to wonder why a kid from the Blandor family would even be in a rundown place like the Gray Zone. It hits him that at this point in the timeline, the Blandor family should still be a major powerhouse. Lost in thought, Asta says Damien's name, and the kid answers excitedly, revealing his other eye in the process. It's green. No cap, this kid has 2 completely different colored eyes. Seeing those eyes immediately unlocks a crucial memory Asta had forgotten: the odd-eyed kid. This was the very same boy who would later grow up to become the infamous monster of Blandor. He was the Mad Butcher, a guy so unkillable you literally couldn't put him down. And right after Damien finishes healing Asta, he just crouches down and starts counting ants like a totally normal kid, leaving Asta completely shook. Before Asta regressed back when he was a troubleshooter, He and his team got a mission from the Declan family to go to the Blandor estate because apparently the Blandors needed help. They claimed there was some kind of monster on their property. While they were on their way, Asta and his crew figured they were dealing with an ogre or some other beast. But when they arrived at the estate, they walked into a scene of absolute horror. It was Damien just tearing people to shreds like it was nothing. Damien was endlessly casting healing magic on himself, laughing like a total psycho as he fought. This was the exact moment he earned the title, the Monster of Blandor. The Butcher. What if you were the one guy who just wouldn't die no matter how hard they tried to off you? Asta decides to just shelve those traumatic memories for now and focus on the present. He's wondering why a direct descendant of the legendary Blandor family is standing right in front of him. This kid is literally the only heir to the entire house, which makes it super weird that he's slumming it in the gray zone. Just then, Damien throws out a totally random suggestion. He tells Asta they should go get something to eat. Damien says his mom always told him he needed to eat to stay healthy, and he low-key roasts Asta, saying his weakness probably comes from not eating enough. Asta has no choice but to admit it. He's like, dang, the kid's got a point. So Asta asks if he has any money on him. Damien's like, yep, and pulls out a pouch just loaded with gold coins. Asta's face completely lights up when he sees the cash, and he immediately declares that he and Damien are now best friends. Damien's a bit shook by this sudden friendship, but Asta manages to smooth talk his way around the kid. He then lays it on thick, explaining that friends are supposed to share what they have. Damien totally falls for his tricks and agrees with him. Asta suggests they grab a bite, and Damien is all for it. After they're done eating, they head to a shelter to crash. Asta's belly is full for the first time ever, which has Damien giving him a surprised look. He's also shocked that there's a house right above where they ate. Turns out he's just been sleeping on the streets. Then he randomly mentions he doesn't have a dad either. Asta tries to correct him, telling him that of course he has a dad, but Damien just won't accept it. Asta then asks Damien if he has a mom, but Damien says he doesn't have one of those either. Basically, his logic is that since they aren't right here with him, they don't exist. It finally clicks for Asta what's going on. Trying to get a handle on this, Asta asks Damien how long he's been all alone. Damien reveals that after he ran away from home, he has slept 10 times. Asta immediately wonders if Damien is being chased by someone. Since he said he slept 10 times, Asta figures he's been on the run for 10 days straight. But then Damien clarifies that he took some naps too. Sometimes he'd even nap twice in one day, but the grand total of sleeps and naps he's had is 10. With this new info, Asta does some quick math and realizes he's probably only been away from his family for about 3 or 4 days. Damien is acting like a totally normal kid, and Asta figures that even the craziest psychos must have been innocent at some point seeing Damien all by himself. Asta decides he's gonna be his nanny for a bit, hoping to maybe forge a connection with the powerful Blandor family. He knows this connection would be a massive advantage when he finally decides to take on the Declan family in the future. But Asta is still hung up on the dude who stabbed him 57 times. Before lying down, he tells Damien not to bother him. He explains that he has something he needs to do, and Damien instantly figures out that Asta is about to practice his breathing. You see, in Asta's past life, his magic foundation was pretty much garbage. That's why he had to resort to breaking into noble houses to steal their spell books. He nearly died countless times, but he managed to get his hands on several spells. He even snagged the hardened body spells that knights use. He got a bunch of others too, but it wasn't until he was about to be killed that he finally saw what real power looked like. This time around, though, he's aiming to be absolutely cracked from the start. The spell he wants to master is Declan's own foundational art. It's called the Heavenly Origin Technique, and it's a foundation-based art that can literally accommodate every single attribute of mana. He'd memorized it for research back in the day, but now he's hyped that he can actually use it for himself. It's a breathing technique, and the moment he kicks it into gear, he feels a tidal wave of power surging through him, like his whole body is being dipped in lava. Even though the pain is off the charts, Asta is determined to push through it. Model. All of a sudden, Asta feels this crazy burning sensation as impurities get torched right out of his system. Turns out this technique is an exclusive perk for high-level nobles. It basically brute forces mana through your circuits to incinerate all the gunk that's built up inside. Asta just leans into the process, and soon enough, he feels like he's submerged in a pure pool of mana. When he finally comes to after that agonizing experience, Damien has already conked out. but Asta is shook when he sees there are literally no impurities left in his own circuits. On top of that, his mana is now ridiculously pure, even cleaner than it was in his past life. He knows, though, that even with this power-up, trying to beat Declan is still a long shot. Still, his odds just got a little better. Asta gets himself hyped remembering he's a troubleshooter, and giving up just isn't in his DNA. A bit later, Asta helps Damien with a quick disguise, changing his hair to brown and swapping his clothes to help him stay low-key. To complete the look, he gives him a cap to wear. Damien asks what the game plan is, and Asta replies that they're about to go out and stir up some chaos. Asta immediately finds the dude who socked him 57 times earlier. The second the guy spots him, he opens his mouth asking where he's been, but before any more trash talk can spill out, Asta slams a fist right into his gut. That single punch sends a lightning bolt of pain through the guy's system, and he instantly blacks out. Asta's pretty proud of himself, not gonna lie. He's glad he managed to get payback started at the right place. But he is far from finished with this guy. He fully intends to hit him 123 times. The commotion quickly drew the attention of the rest of the house. When they stepped outside, they saw their youngest member was at the center of all the drama, and Asta was already fantasizing about the beatdown he was about to deliver. Asta lets all his anger loose and just starts wailing on the entire crew of dudes. He channels mana straight into his fists, making every single punch hit different. Damien just kicks back and watches Asta unleash hell, and no cap, he's enjoying the show. To make things even wilder, Damien starts messing with the group. He begins healing them just so Asta can dish out even more punishment. The very first person he heals is the main punk that Asta's got beef with. The dude actually thinks Damien is helping him out right up until Asta grabs him again, reminding him how many hits are still left on the tab. Once his fists get tired, Asta decides to switch it up and grabs a couple of canes. He flogs the main dude so hard his backside is practically smoking, but he still isn't satisfied. He calls over to Damien to heal the guy so he can run the whole process back one more time. The victim isn't seeing a couple of kids anymore. He's seeing two straight-up demonic maniacs who are dead set on ending his precious life. After a whole day of this, Asta finally feels like he's had his fill and decides to stop. For the cherry on top, he genuinely thanks his victims for all their help. He basically used them as his personal punching bags and feels totally fulfilled, having landed over 100 hits per person. That brings the grand total to over 1,000 hits. And yeah, he's pretty proud of himself for that. The leader of the victims politely asks Asta if they can finally go, and Asta casually agrees. But then the guy gets a little bold, reminding Asta that this is his house, and maybe Asta should be the one to get lost. Asta takes a moment to process that, then just glares at him with such a terrifying aura that it forces the dude and all his buddies to scramble back into a corner. Just then, Asta gets a feeling that someone else is approaching their location. He can tell whoever it is moves with skill just like a professional troubleshooter. That's when it hits him. This person must be after Damien. Asta can't believe they were found, especially since he thought he was being so careful. Asta knows he's in a bad spot, but he's not the type to just sit around and wait to get attacked. Because he was a troubleshooter in his past life, he was basically built for dealing with impossible situations. And this is his opening move. He starts sucking in every bit of mana he can find, compressing it over and over again. From this, he forges a literal mana bullet, takes aim at the guy charging straight for them, and lets it fly. But bruh, the dude does an insane knee slide, dodging the shot before yelling out Damien's name and calling him master as he slides right up to him. And it turns out Damien actually knows the guy. He's a butler for the family named Alfredo, who immediately pulls Damien into a tight hug. But the kid isn't having it and tells him to back off. Alfredo's like, nope, saying he has to bring Damien back to the family. Asta's just standing in the back, totally confused, watching this absolutely bizarre scene play out in front of him. That's when it finally clicks that Damien must have run away from home. After the weird introductions are finally over, Alfredo offers Asta a spot with them back at the estate, seeing as Damien seems to have gotten pretty attached to him. Asta actually takes a second to process the offer. All he knows is that this is some big shot family, but he's low-key trying to figure out what their real angle is. But still, he was already planning on making some connections, and since the family's territory happens to be on his way to the city anyway, he figures it's super convenient. The Zenyan Academy is also in the area, and since its library is legendary, Asta is already making plans to check it out. As research for building his own insane library one day, after thinking it over, Asta accepts the offer, and in what feels like no time, they're arriving at the massive family estate. When Asta climbs out of the carriage, it dawns on him that this is his first time officially setting foot on the property. Since it's getting late, Alfredo suggests they should all probably get some rest for the night. He asks one of the maids, Lancy, to look after the two boys. Lancy shoots Damien a look that could freeze fire, and Damien immediately knows he's going to be in for it later. That night, Alfredo makes his way to the matriarch's chambers, a woman named Gamo. He reports that Damien was found in the gray zone, and that he's just brought him back. Gamo has zero chill and instantly blasts an attack spell out of pure rage before she even hears that her son is perfectly safe. She breathes a massive sigh of relief, and Alfredo does the same. He knew it would have been a straight-up death sentence for anyone who'd even thought about hurting Damien. Apparently, Gamo used to go by the name the Blood Witch, and her temper is basically a force of nature. Gamo then gives Alfredo props for handling his business so well, but before he leaves, Alfredo says there's one more thing. He tells Gamo about Damien's new friend, and how Asta sensed his presence long before he ever made a move. On top of that, the kid had already cooked up a counterattack. Alfredo reveals that Asta was ready to fire a mana bullet point blank. Gamo is seriously impressed when she hears this, admitting it's a crazy amount of talent for some random kid from the gray zone. Because of this, Alfredo tells the matriarch that he has a big favor to ask. The next day, Asta wakes up to Alfredo hitting him with a completely wild request. He wants Asta to become his successor. Astas is totally floored by this, and Alfredo's actually glad to see the kid looking so surprised. He's feeling pretty confident that Asta will snatch up this golden opportunity, but then Alfredo is the one who gets stunned. Because Asta flat out rejects the offer, Alfredo's convinced his ears are broken. He just can't be hearing this right. Even Damien is shook, watching Asta turn down such an insane proposition. Asta admits that, yeah, it's a huge opportunity, but he tells Alfredo that he's happy doing his own thing for now. It immediately clicks for Alfredo that Asta must have been born in the gray zone and just learned magic through his own raw talent, which explains why the kid is so full of himself. So, Alfredo decides to try and humble him, a bit warning him that the world is a massive place, and he doesn't know the first thing about the real dangers lurking out there. Alfredo looks at Asta and basically calls him a low-level goblin, trying to act tough in a giant's world. But Asta just claps back, saying he doesn't feel like a goblin, he feels like a freaking wyvern. This response low-key stuns Alfredo, who decides Asta needs a little reality check to see what he's talking about. So, Alfredo hauls Asta over to the Butler training grounds, where all the prospects are going hard in a practice session. Alfredo is beaming with pride, showing off this impressive scene, like it's his personal art collection. He tells Asta that these trainees are all his age and are considered the cream of the crop for House Blandor, while Asta just quietly scopes them out. He's got to admit their training is so on point, they don't even move like kids anymore. They're like tiny, well-oiled machines. Still, what he's seeing just doesn't hit different for him. Asta casually tells Alfredo he can sense their auras. Alfredo's face completely lights up when he hears this, thinking Asta is impressed. So, he shoots his shot again, asking Asta if he's finally ready to accept his proposal and get a chance to be in the spotlight, to shine just as brightly as the prodigies right in front of him. But Asta, with zero chill, turns the offer down again, telling the old man straight up that he hates the light. Just then, one of the trainees named Winster shoots his hand up, saying he's got a suggestion. Winster starts spouting off that Asta is obviously talentless, which is the only reason he'd reject such a killer offer. He keeps going, saying Asta probably can't even process how cracked they are, and he'd be happy to show him personally. My guy is basically asking for a throwdown with Asta, and while Alfredo can sense his cocky attitude, he allows it, asking Asta if he's down for the challenge. Asta totally gets why the kid wants to fight. From the trainee's perspective, he's a rival who just showed up out of nowhere. He knows they see him as some nobody who got lucky landing an offer they've all been grinding their entire lives for. The chance to be the next head butler is no small thing after all. Asta accepts the duel, but he asks Alfredo if he can be the one to choose his opponent. Alfredo gives him the nod, so Asta points directly at Winster, but he doesn't stop there. His finger keeps moving, pointing out 4 more of the trainees. The whole room is shook when Asta announces he wants a 5-on-1 match. Winster can't believe what he's hearing, and Asta just smirks, telling him he's free to back out if he's scared. Alfredo just starts laughing at the scene. He sees that Asta has that fire, that main character energy his successor absolutely needs to have. Alfredo then turns to Asta. He asks him if he's prepared to back up his big words, and Asta confirms it without a shred of doubt. So Alfredo lays down a bet if Asta can last a single minute in this fight, he'll get a special gift. But if he can't, then he has to accept the deal and become his successor. Asta can practically taste the desperation in Alfredo's voice, but he isn't fazed by the challenge at all. Now that they're all on the same page, Alfredo orders them to step into the ring. The instructor nervously asks Alfredo if this whole thing isn't a little too dangerous, and Alfredo admits that, yeah, it definitely is. But he says it's a necessary evil to teach Asta a lesson about his own arrogance. The instructor is legit terrified because the last thing he wants is to be responsible for Damien's guest getting hurt. He rushes over to Damien and basically tells him that his boy is in some serious danger. The instructor is begging Damien to stop the fight, but to his shock, Damien is totally hyped for it and even wants to join in. Lancey has to step in and tell him that Gamma will have his hide if he gets involved. Fed up, Alfredo tells the instructor to just start the match. He's done wasting time with all the chatter. The instructor finally realizes he's out of options, having done everything he could to prevent the duel from happening. Lancey picks up on the instructor's defeated mood and decides to bounce, but not before telling Damien one last time to not interfere. Damien just gives her a reassuring smile, promising he won't get involved. The instructor walks over to the trainees to explain the rules of engagement. He announces it's a free-for-all, and the match will only be over when one side officially surrenders. He makes it crystal clear, however, that as the referee he reserves the right to stop the fight at any moment. Winster is giving Asta a death glare, getting ready to absolutely crush him and expose him as a complete fraud. The moment the instructor calls the start, Asta doesn't waste a single second, instantly driving a mana-infused punch deep into Winster's gut. The force of the blow sends him stumbling back, coughing and sputtering in pain. Before Winster can even recover, Asta has already become a blur of motion, taking down the other 4 trainees in an instant. All the other dudes are just writhing on the floor, absolutely wrecked, but Winster is somehow the last man standing. Asta gives him this ice-cold, villainous stare, promising to give him an experience he'll never forget. He's not talking about a good time either, and while he's saying all this, he's casually rolling mana bullets around in his hands, bruh. Asta schools him, saying lesson number 1 is to never ever sleep on the little guy. Winster is low-key freaking out because he just saw Asta casually whipping up mana bullets. This dude knows exactly how much insane power it takes to create a mana bullet from scratch. Asta keeps the lecture going, telling him lesson number 2 is to quit judging people so damn fast. As he says this, he starts blasting Winster and his buddies with those same mana bullets. You can just hear them screaming as the bullets hit, causing some serious next-level pain. And for the grand finale, lesson 3, Asta tells Winster the world is a vast and brutal place. Then he just strolls right up to Winster and lays him out flat with a single punch. Asta cracks this wicked smile at the trainees, letting them know he's going to be their personal tutor for these life lessons. Winster is just screaming in agony, calling Asta a complete psycho. He yells that Asta isn't even using magic, but our boy just argues back that it totally is. To really drive the point home, Asta punctuates the lesson with a kick to Winster's head, telling him it's called physical magic. The entire room is completely shook, as Asta just demolishes these trainees like they're nothing. He's literally just manhandling them, dragging them around like they're a bunch of rag dolls. Alfredo can't even speak. He's just floored by the magic bullet Asta just pulled off. He's running the numbers in his head, wondering how many times that magic had to be compressed to be that powerful. Alfredo guesses it had to be at least 4 or maybe even 5, and that's when it hits him. If Asta had used those mana bullets on him back then, it would have messed him up no cap. He puts it all together. Asta has perfect control over his own mana supply. And on top of that, the kid's a straight-up brawler. Over in the corner, Damien's just patching everyone up, so Asta can keep the party going. Out of nowhere, Lancey and Gamo walk into the room. She immediately calls out to Alfredo, and when the instructor sees the matron is here, he lets out a massive sigh of relief, thinking they're finally about to be saved. Gamo asks Alfredo what in the world is happening, and he just claims he was running a simple test. Gamo is not buying it. She can't believe he'd call this beatdown a test when Asta is straight up trashing these trainees. And Damien's just in the background playing medic, so the beatings can continue. Gamo snaps at Alfredo, ordering him to round up the trainees and get them out of there. She then tells Asta and Damien to head back to their rooms immediately. Right after she walks up to the instructor and tells him he's fired, completely shocking the guy. Later that night, Gamo explains to Alfredo that even though his heart was in the right place, he took things way too far. Alfredo totally owns up to it, telling Gamo he's ready to face whatever punishment she gives him. Gamo then asks if Damien helped Asta out during the fight, but Alfredo says nope. Alfredo is just like, nah, Asta is just built different when it comes to throwing hands. He then explains to Gamo that Asta used that magic bullet again. but this time he compressed it over and over to crank the power level up to 11. Hearing this, Gamo realizes Asta's control over his mana is absolutely insane. She might have missed the beginning, but she got there in time to see Asta taking on 5 trainees at once without breaking a sweat. That hits different because Gamo knows that handling even one magic bullet is tough for a high-level mage. Gamo brings up the successor proposal, but Alfredo tells her Asta shot it down without a second thought. This makes Gamo realize she needs to totally rethink her evaluation of this kid. She tells Alfredo to bring Asta to her, and when he gets there, Damien is in the room too, just chowing down on cookies like he owns the place. But before Gamo can even get a word in, she slides a box across the table telling Asta it's that gift Alfredo promised him. Asta's even more thrown off that Gamo is the one handing it over. She tells him to pop it open, and when he does, his jaw just about hits the floor. It's a legit high-grade item. Bruh, Asta is shook because in the Blandor family, only the absolute top-tier recruits for the elite mage divisions get their hands on something this cracked. He immediately suspects there's a catch, and it's like Gamo can read his mind or something. She just tells him to take it, no worries and no strings attached. Gamo explains it's a thank you for helping her son out in the gray zone, and also kinda an apology for the drama earlier. Asta isn't about to get played though, so he asks if using this item locks him into joining the Blandor family. She hits him with a hard no. He then asks if it's poisoned, but she gives the same answer. Asta's genuinely stunned that there are 0 conditions for using the item. Asta, a little taken aback, just thanks the lady for the gift. And right after that, Gamo mentions she has a proposal. The second Asta hears that, he's like, yep, I knew it. Gamo lays out her big idea she wants to arrange for Asta to get into the academy so he can go with Damien. Asta's totally confused, so Gamo explains that Damien was supposed to start last year, but he straight up refused, so they postponed it. Gamo just wasn't expecting her son to literally run away from home, like he did. She can already see that Damien looks up to Asta, which is why she's asking for his help. Asta puts 2 and 2 together. Gamo knows that if she forces Damien to go, he'll just bolt again. On top of that, Asta realizes this is a golden opportunity for him since the academy is a networking goldmine. He's thinking it's not a bad deal at all. It's a sweet offer, no cap, but at the same time, it low-key feels like he's being put on a leash. So he decides to play it cool and tell her he'll think about it. Gamo is fine with his answer and says she'll be waiting for his reply. Then she totally switches gears. She asks Asta why he rejected the offer to become Alfredo's successor. Asta can literally feel Alfredo eavesdropping and decides it's the perfect time to mess with his ego. He simply tells the lady his knees are too precious, which is a savage way of saying he ain't bowing down to nobody. That comment definitely hits different for the butler hiding just outside the door listening in on everything. When Asta gets back to his room, he uses the item and is absolutely floored by the insane changes it's making to his body. His mana has shot up an insane amount from just a 10% absorption rate. His entire physique is also shifting, literally becoming that of a flameborn. What really gets Asta is that absorbing this thing doesn't leave any impurities in his body whatsoever. And about that academy offer, he's already made up his mind. He knows that enrolling is the fastest way for him to find a powerful sponsor. The pros are stacked high, but he just can't shake the feeling that he's walking right into a carefully laid trap. To clear his head, Asta decides to go out for a run. He steps out of his room, and right then someone calls out asking if he's Asta. Asta turns to look at the guy and immediately clocks his platinum blonde hair. Since Damien is the direct heir, Asta figures this dude has to be a relative. Asta decides to lie on the spot, telling the guy he's got the wrong person. The dude is visibly confused because the person in front of him perfectly matches the description he was given. Asta doubles down, saying that stuff like hair color can look different depending on the light, hinting that a lot of things might not be what they seem. The guy figures he's got the wrong person and starts to dip, apologizing for the mix-up. But right on cue, Alfredo comes barreling in, and bruh, he drops Asta's name at the worst possible moment. He's trying to bring up that whole butler gig again, but by shouting Asta's name, he pretty much just outed our boy to the aggressive stranger, who was literally on his way out the door. The dude immediately spins around, saying he knew it all along because Asta has a seriously punchable face. Asta's cover is totally blown at this point, so he just owns up to it, admitting he's the guy he was looking for. This completely sets the dude off, but seeing Alfredo there makes him pump the brakes, but only for a second. He tells Asta to pull up to the mage hall later that day so he can rearrange his face and teach him some manners. After the punk leaves, Alfredo asks Asta if everything's cool, but Asta just plays it off. Loki, though, Asta has been itching for someone to unleash his frustration on, and this guy just became the perfect volunteer. Asta fully intends to go to the Mage's Hall later and absolutely wreck this dude. He then hits up Alfredo asking if he can get a meeting with Gamo right then, and next thing you know, he's being led to her office. Gamo is pretty shocked that Asta is asking to see her so early in the day. She asks him if he's finally made a decision about their previous conversation, and he shocks her by saying yes. Asta lets her know he's taking them up on their offer and plans to enroll in the academy, which leaves Gamo completely stunned. But at the same time, she's also incredibly relieved. Gamo promises Asta they'll get everything prepared for him right away. After that, Asta bounces from the room just as Alfredo is walking in. He asks Gamo for the scoop on Asta, and she confirms that he accepted their proposal. Alfredo is absolutely over the moon when he hears this, celebrating, like he just won the lottery. Apparently, their grand plan is to cover all of Asta's fees for the entire first semester. But come next semester, Asta is going to find himself in a tough spot trying to pay for his classes. Alfredo is betting that Asta will get super anxious because he'll be desperate to keep learning, and that's where he'll make his move and swoop in to offer a helping hand like some kind of savior. Gamo has to cut him off, telling Alfredo to keep it down because he's being way too loud. Alfredo says his bad and makes a break for the kitchen since it's almost breakfast time. Once he's gone, Gamo totally gets why Alfredo is so hyped. She knows he thinks he's finally got a clear shot at making Asta his successor, but honestly Gamo feels like the whole plan is a bit of a mess. Alfredo, however, is feeling super confident about his scheme, mainly because the former head butler used the exact same move on him years ago. Asta then makes his way over to the Mage Hall, right where that jerk from earlier challenged him to go. He pushes the door open to find a mage with his face hidden by a hood, who immediately asks him what business he has there. Since Asta has no idea what that little brat's name is, he just starts to awkwardly stutter. All of a sudden, the mage's whole vibe changes, and he gets super energetic, telling Asta he's been waiting for him. He tells Asta to follow him and leads him into a different room. The mage tells him to go on in, but to watch his head. As Asta enters the room, he gets absolutely blasted by a whirlwind of flying papers, and it clicks why the mage gave him that warning. He soon spots a guy who introduces himself as Wenji von Blandor. Wenji then asks Asta if he's there to see his little brother. But Asta is genuinely thrown for a loop by the question. He's trying to connect the dots, wondering if that punk from this morning is this guy's brother. This whole situation actually reminds Asta of something he knew about mages from his past life. It seems like there's a common trait that pretty much all mages share. It starts with their hair getting all wild, and then they just start pulling it out until it won't grow back. No cap, Asta has actually broken this down into 3 different stages. The first stage is when the mages are in complete denial about their hair falling out, so they hide it under their robes. The second stage is when they just give up completely and let their bald heads shine for the world to see. Stage 3 is when guys just accept their fate and go full-on bald, shaving everything off. But then you've got stage 4, where they basically become mad scientists trying to make the impossible happen. They'll try anything to magically regrow their hair, but let's be real, nobody has ever pulled that off. Yet none of this seems to be a problem for Wen Jie, who's just chilling in front of him looking completely comfortable. Before anything else, Wen Jie starts by apologizing for how his younger brother was acting. Asta then straight up asks Wen Jie if he works at an academy or something. Turns out Wen Jie casually reveals that he's the current vice dean. He then slides a drink over to Asta. Asta's low-key impressed that a dude like Wen Jie has already climbed the ladder to vice dean at some academy. He's positive Wen Jie must be absolutely cracked, because you can't just land that kind of gig with a fancy family name. Wen Jie throws a little jab at Asta, saying he's definitely built different. Wen Jie then shows his hand, admitting he knows Asta's been pushed to enroll at the Zinnian Academy. He says it's a huge deal, congratulates Asta, and tells him it's a fantastic chance to learn. Wen Jie even mentions he graduated from that same academy from the 145th class. Asta's vibe is pure, I didn't ask, since he couldn't care less about the details this guy is dropping on him. Noticing this, Wen Jie quickly apologizes, claiming he just got a little carried away and started talking nonsense. Wen Jie then pivots, suggesting they should probably get to the real reason they're talking. But right before that, Wen Jie tells Asta there's one quick thing he needs to confirm. He looks Asta dead in the eye and asks if he'd be willing to put his life on the line for a friend. Asta is completely thrown for a loop by that question. Wen Jie explains that this whole thing is about the Blandor family's reputation, as he reaches into his storage and pulls out a book. The moment Asta sees the book, his face is a mask of pure shock. Wenjie lets him know that he's willing to part with the tome if Asta is truly ready to risk his own life. That book is no cap the ultimate secret of the Blondor family. Meanwhile, Gamo is busy with her garden thinking about Damien's big move to the academy. She's just so relieved that the whole process went down without any major drama. She also reflects on what a genuinely good friend Asta is to Damien. She knows Asta has a good heart, even though Alfredo sometimes says the kid can be a bit of a punk. Gamo isn't worried about that though, since she figures every kid has a bit of a shameless streak. What really makes Gamo happy is that even after Asta found out about Damien's background, he didn't start acting any different. Gamo gets that people like Asta are a rare breed, which is exactly why she wants him to stick by her son's side. Despite all this, Gamo understands one hard truth. She knows Asta is a free spirit, like a wild bird that will never let itself be caged. But she's already scheming up different ways she can try to keep Asta close. For the sake of her son Damien, she's ready to do whatever it takes to keep Asta in their lives. Back at the Mage Hall, Asta is wondering why in the world Wenjie is offering him his family's secret technique. He's carefully analyzing the situation, trying to figure out if he's walking into a trap. On the flip side, Wenjie is trying to get a read on Asta's emotions, but is coming up with nothing because Asta has a perfect poker face. He compares him to a man behind an iron mask whose true identity is impossible to figure out. Wenjie then gives Asta a piece of advice. Think his answer through carefully and don't get distracted by the reward being dangled in front of him. Asta just tells Wenjie he's ready to give his answer now. Asta lays it out simply. If Wenjie's request is something he can actually do, he'll do it. If not, then he won't. Wenjie ups the ante, warning Asta that just hearing the proposal could put his life on the line. Furthermore, if Asta listens to the proposal and then backs out, Wenjie says with no fear in his voice that he might just have to kill him. Asta tells Wenjie to go ahead and try since we're all destined to live only once anyway. Even though Asta's on his second run through life, Wenjie tries to hit him with some killer intent, but our boy Asta doesn't even flinch. When Wenjie sees that this guy is completely unfazed, he cracks a smile and says, Asta's passed his little test. He explains that he's looking for an ally he can actually count on, but it absolutely can't be anyone from inside his own family. Wenjie stops playing games and reveals what he's really after. He makes it clear this isn't some petty family power struggle. He says they're all pretty close. The real issue is that he's being watched like a hawk by the Declan family. This news totally blindsides Asta, who immediately asks Wenjie for more details. He's like, bro, why in the world are the Declans keeping tabs on you? Seeing as Asta's already said he isn't afraid of dying, Wenjie decides to spill the beans on his whole situation. Turns out he's been digging into the Declan family's origin magic, and he thinks he's on the verge of a major discovery. Apparently, he managed to get his hands on the Declan's heavenly origins magic, which is a technique that's supposed to be exclusive to their bloodline. When Asta hears this, his internal alarms start going off. He realizes that he's basically chatting with a dead man walking, so he asks Wenjie if his goal is to destroy the magic. That's when Wenjie reveals he's actually found a way to level it up. He wants to upgrade the Declan's secret art and polish it into absolute perfection. Asta hears this and instantly decides he's talking to a complete lunatic with a death wish. Wenjie just claims the urge to do the research was too powerful to resist, so he went for it. In Asta's eyes, Wenjie is 100% unhinged, but at the same time it all clicks into place. The timing of this whole thing is perfect. In his previous life, while Declan was busy wiping the Blandor family off the face of the earth, Wenjie was holed up doing this research. He was working on the brand new 10,000 circle. This explains why Declan went so hard against the Blandor family. He must have seen the insane potential of what the 10,000 circle was capable of. It starts to dawn on him that Declan probably stole the power for himself, which is why the dude was so completely cracked. Wenjie then asks if Asta is down to help him push his research even further, but Asta has a question of his own. He asks Wenjie why he chose him for such a dangerous gig. Wenjie admits he couldn't tell his own family about his work because he's pretty sure there's a mole in their ranks. The only problem is, he can't figure out who it is. Asta throws out the idea of a secretary, but Wenjie doesn't think so. He tells him the leak is probably tied to how he got the data in the first place. Wenjie then adds that he took some precautions the second he realized his cover was blown. Asta then wonders why he didn't just join Declan, since that seems like the smarter move, and they definitely bring him on board. Wenjie lets him know that he has his own personal reasons for not siding with them. And since Asta isn't connected to the Blondor family, he's the perfect candidate for the job. Wenjie then says it's a joint research project, but right now he's hit a massive wall. Wenjie promises Asta he'll be rewarded handsomely for his help. All he needs him to do is deliver his thesis to a certain Professor Perun over at Zion Academy. In return, he's offering the healing light spell. Asta sees a golden opportunity and decides to haggle. He tells Wenjie he has a better offer. He wants the healing light spell now, as a down payment, and he also wants the completed 1,000 circle once it's finished. Asta is basically going for double or nothing. Hearing this, Wenjie has to admit Asta's got some serious nerve. But since the mission is so time-sensitive, Wenjie has no other option but to agree to his terms. He promises to give Asta the spell as soon as it's perfected, but he adds that he has one condition of his own. He needs Asta's help with the project before it's fully completed, and Asta tells him that's no problem at all. As he takes the thesis papers from Wenjie, Asta trolls him for a second, pretending he can't read it, before quickly switching gears. He tells Wenjie he's just messing with him. Then Asta gets serious and asks if Professor Perun is someone they can really trust. Wenjie spills the tea that he and Perun were old-school rivals from the academy, always at each other's throats. They were constantly trying to one-up each other in absolutely everything, but that whole rivalry pretty much died when Wenjie had to return to his family duties. Asta can't believe his luck, thinking he's about to run into another total lunatic just like Wenjie at the academy. When he gets settled in his room, he finds a massive stack of books sent over by There's also a letter included with the delivery. In the note, Wenjie lays out the exact order Asta should study the books to really help him level up his knowledge. Without skipping a beat, Asta starts organizing the books and has to admit the guy is a low-key genius. Asta then begins drafting a list of potential sponsors for his book project, and you better believe Wenjie's name is right at the top. Asta's grand plan is to put the Healing Light book into the tower he's going to build eventually. This would let everybody get a chance to read it, but he knows he will have to run it by Damien first, and is fully prepared to pull the friend card. Asta's already getting hyped about the library he wants to build, aiming to get magic knowledge out to the masses. He considers his run-in with Wenjie a total game changer. On the flip side, Wenjie is also pretty stoked. He met Asta, who seems like a genuinely useful person he's now got his eye on. On top of that, he's seriously impressed that Asta wasn't even a little bit scared of death, even if it was just an empty threat. The fact that Asta showed absolutely zero fear just made him way more interested, because Wenjie could see it in his eyes. Those were the eyes of someone who doesn't fear the Reaper, and Wenjie is glad he's found someone competent instead of the usual trash he works with. Wenjie can also sense that Asta is hiding a whole lot, but he actually thinks that's a good thing. He basically sees Asta as a kindred spirit, someone who's chasing the same massive dream he is. Soon after, Asta starts getting ready for the academy. He gets his stuff packed and throws on the official academy uniform. Lancey swings by his room to get him explaining he'll just have to deal with some simple registration paperwork. That's all he'll need to do once he arrives on campus. Lancey then drops the news that both he and Damien get to skip the entrance exam completely. Lancey gives his uniform a look over and tells him the fit is on point and totally suits him. Asta, ever the gentleman, smoothly thanks the lady for the kind words. He starts thinking about the exam exemption he and Damien got and quickly figures out it's a perk reserved for the big shot families. The whole thing is called a special admission. And honestly, Asta is pretty hyped that he got that VIP treatment too. Asta reaches the carriage and sees Damien and his mother already waiting for him. The lady tells the two boys to look out for each other at the academy, and Asta gives her a respectful nod. Kamao also tells Asta she's praying he achieves everything he's setting out to do. Asta flashes a smile and thanks her, but deep down, he's dead set on crushing his goals, no doubt about it. This academy is practically a gold mine of opportunities after all, and Asta is planning to grab every single one he can. He's also low-key excited to meet his new classmates, but on the way he checks out the light spell book. The one Wenjie gave him is incredible. He's blown away because the interpretations make so much sense. It seems like every noble family has its own way of reading the techniques, but when you put them side by side, Asta is convinced that Wenjie's interpretation is the only one that actually works with Declan's celestial principle. Just then, they finally pull up to the academy, and Asta is glued to the window, staring at the famous Zion Academy. Lancey lets them know that this is the end of the line for the carriage service. According to a tradition from the founding principal on admission day, every single student has to walk, no matter their status. Lancey says this is where they'll part ways, and she wishes the two of them a great time at the academy. The second they step out of the carriage, Damien grabs Asta, telling him they gotta book it to the opening ceremony. Lancey warned him that if they're late there might not be any seats left, and Asta is completely shocked to hear this. Because the entrance ceremony isn't some backwoods festival where you can just grab any seat you want. That's when it finally clicks for him. Lancey was the one who said that. He easily pieces it together that Lancey was just dangling a carrot to get Damien to stop dragging his heels. So Asta just decides to roll with it for once. They pull up to the massive hall where the whole ceremony is going down, and Damien's jaw is on the floor looking at how many people are there. Even though the hall is barely half full, Damien actually bought Lancey's story that they wouldn't have found a single seat. If they'd been any later, Asta seriously can't believe Damien is still this dense and hasn't figured out he was totally played. Asta just whips out their reserved tickets to see where their actual spots are. Damien points to a random spot in the hall, suggesting they just sit there, and Asta is totally baffled. He can't get his head around the fact that Damien is suddenly so hyped for the academy when he was trying to ditch it before. Suddenly, Damien plows right into another student, a towering dude named Exeter who's built like a brick house. The guy glares down at Damien like he's something you'd scrape off the bottom of your shoe. Asta quickly helps his buddy up, asking if he's alright. Damien just brushes it off, saying he's good. And he takes the L, saying it was his fault for not looking where he was going. Damien and Asta are about to dip when Exeter stops them dead in their tracks. It turns out Damien got some spit on his fancy clothes. Asta's still trying to process all this when Damien rushes over to the guy to help clean the mess. But in the process, he just makes it worse by adding more of his own spit. This obviously sets Exeter off, and he hauls off and throws a massive punch right at Damien's face. But Asta's reflexes are cracked, and he intercepts the punch before it gets anywhere near Damien. Asta tells the guy to chill out, way with the temper tantrum, before he does something he'll regret. Exeter angrily fires back, asking who he is, and Damien pipes up saying that Asta is his friend. Asta confirms it with a nod, and the light bulb finally goes off in Exeter's head about why Asta jumped in. Still, Exeter tells Asta he's about to make the biggest mistake of his life. Asta can already see where this is headed, but he's not even sweating it. He's figured out that Exeter is the type to let his fists do the talking, not his brain. This little showdown quickly starts pulling in a crowd of other students. Apparently, Exeter is a direct descendant of the legendary Dolampi family, a fact the audience knows well. And they're already placing bets on who's going to take the W in this fight. No cap, most of them are putting their money on Exeter to completely dominate. On the flip side, one student with some sense wants to stop the three of them before things get way out of hand. He thinks they can't have a real throwdown with the room being so packed. But another student immediately cooks up a magic barrier around them, basically creating a pop-up fight club so they can go all out. The crowd goes nuts with most of them cheering for Exeter, shouting that they're betting on him to win. Meanwhile, some creepy student is lurking in the background, not even involved in the conflict. But he's got this all-knowing smirk on his face, like he's already seen the ending. Once they're inside the barrier, Exeter gives his full name and demands Asta do the same. Asta just replies that he wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth like Exeter. He tells Exeter to just think of him as some nobody who's just passing by. Exeter gets all arrogant and tells Asta he'll let him take the first shot since he's a mage, which just makes Asta laugh out loud. And he proceeds to totally clown on the guy. That's all it takes to make Exeter charge at him like a wild animal. Asta then reminds the dude that he's actually got to fight two people. Asta effortlessly dodges the guy's swing and lands a brutal shot to his face, sending him reeling backward. Exeter can't even believe he just got rocked by a new student, especially given the insane power behind that punch. He's seriously starting to question if Asta is even a magician to begin with. It suddenly hits Exeter that Damien just cast a healing spell on him. He has no clue why Damien's doing this, but he's low-key about to experience the worst beatdown of his entire life. While he's totally zoned out, Asta closes the distance and smashes another punch right into his stomach. Before Exeter can even react, a whole barrage of blows is raining down on his body. Then the horrifying realization finally clicks. One of them is beating him senseless, while the other one heals him on a loop. He has to admit he's stumbled into a fight with a couple of legit psychos. For the first time, Exeter realizes he might actually be scared, but then the other students watching start hyping him up. They're all yelling at him not to hold back, calling him the hope of all warriors. Gassed up by all the motivation, Exeter finally gets his head in the game, unleashing his fury and calling Asta a mere magician. He swings his arm like a wild man, but Asta easily dodges the first attack. Asta gives him a little praise for trying, but Exeter just screams back, telling him not to look down on him. Going all out, Exter swings his right arm and actually connects, sending Asta flying backward as the students erupt in cheers. Exter is finally fighting back for real, but even so, Exter doesn't look proud of himself at all. He knows he landed a solid hit, but the impact felt way too light. Asta, meanwhile, pulls off some insane acrobatics in mid-air. He sticks the landing perfectly, leaving Exter completely stunned. Shaking off the shock, Exter charges toward Asta again. Asta glances over and sees Damien still pumping healing magic into Exter. With that constant healing, he knows it's going to be impossible to wear him down. He has to end this with a single decisive blow. To pull this off, Asta taps into a technique he and his old squad developed back in his past life, one born from the collision of magical particles. Asta can